Hello there, my friend. My name is Renee, and I found a Jeffrey Dahmer fanfiction in the cursed abyss of Wattpad. It's 11 chapters long, and I read all of it. Just for you. Aren't you special? Before I summarize it, I'm just going to give a quick disclaimer that I think romanticizing serial killers like this is gross and weird, but I'd rather make a fun video about it, just making fun of it, than make a serious video about it, because that's been done a million times. So this fanfiction, concisely titled Jeffrey Dahmer, opens in Wisconsin, home of many of the world's favorite serial killers. Wisconsin has got two claims to fame: serial killers and cheese. Sounds great to me. I'm packing my bags as we speak. So the story is told from the perspective of the main character, Brinley, who just transferred to a brand new school for her senior year of high school. When she first arrives at her new school on her first day, an unnecessarily rude office lady asks a tall kid named Jeff to show her to her first class, and she takes an immediate liking to him. Later that day, when she's looking for a place to sit at lunch, she ends up choosing to sit with him, despite getting some really weird stares from her classmates. He casually takes a swig of vodka during lunch, which Brinley, to be clear, thinks is not cool, kids. Don't drink at school, it's bad. But they do have a great time at lunch and seem to really like each other a lot. So next she goes home and has dinner with her family and tells them about her new great friend, Jeff. This scene is full of Brinley has a boyfriend jokes and family banter, which is really weird considering the context of this being about a serial killer. But the thing that really got to me was Brinley's sister eating a Lunchable. This is 1978. 10 years before the release of Lunchables. The historical inaccuracy is leaving me quaking. Reading this is a trip because it seems like just a regular, kind of bad high school love story, and then the words Jeffrey Dahmer just pop out at you every few paragraphs, and you're like, oh yeah. That's what this is. So the next day, Brinley finds out that Jeffrey is generally disliked in school, proving that Wisconsin teens have stellar instincts, but she doesn't really care at all and continues to develop romantic feelings for him. She invites him to her dad's birthday later that night, and he accepts. When they're about to leave school, they almost kiss, which is where I think it's fitting to bring up another thing. Jeffrey Dahmer was gay. He was also a serial killer, rapist, and cannibal, but he was also gay. Any concept of him finding love with a girl outside of his crimes is laughable, especially considering that a lot of what he did, or almost all of what he did, really, was sexually or even romantically motivated. I'm not saying I condone gay Jeffrey Dahmer fanfiction. I'm saying I condone it more than I condone this. So in the next chapter, this very straight romance progresses to them making out on her bed. And this reads like something that someone would write about their celebrity crush, which I guess is what this is. Tits out for Dahmer. So as the next chapter begins, Brinley's family likes Jeff a lot, and he makes a really good impression on them. Every now and then, the author throws in something about how Brinley and her family didn't know who Jeffrey Dahmer truly was, as if that excuses all the romanticizing from just before. Like, you, the author, did know exactly what Jeffrey Dahmer was when you wrote this, so... So at school next week, Jeffrey asks Brinley on a date, and naturally, she's thrilled. I quote here, "I internally scream hearing the words come out of his mouth. Jeffrey Dahmer actually wants to go on a date with me?" So that Friday, Jeff picks her up for a date, and she's over the moon, but she is a little bit freaked out by a bong in his car, which leads me to say two things. One, it's the 70s, sis. How are you not used to this by now? Two, if she's scared by a bong, imagine how she'll feel about chemically preserved body parts. So he takes her to a horror movie, The Exorcist 3, which came out in 1990. I think it's meant to be foreshadowing to his later excursions, but if I'm completely honest, I think a horror movie, even one that comes out 12 years in the future, and a bong are pretty weak foreshadowing devices. Next, though, they go back to his house, where he lives alone, and Brinley gets a little bit freaked out by a jar with a rat skeleton in it in his room, which is reasonable. As they're talking, he then confides that he does have frequent violent urges, and he almost knocked out a passing jogger one time so he could lay next to him. So normally this is when you get up and run, but instead, Brinley says that she's glad that he opened up to her. After they watch movies and eat pizza, he drives her home and tells her that he loves her on the way out, and she returns the sentiment. Let me just reiterate that they've known each other for 1 week, and he just described his violent fantasies to her in great detail. Romantic! So that Monday, they go on a hike, and they pass a jogger, who Jeff just stares at creepily. Cute. Then they hike some more in silence, just holding hands but not even looking at each other. And then they stop and have sex in the woods. That's one way to do it, I guess. So months go by, and Brinley and Jeff are planning for the future, and then Brinley misses a period. What a shocker. After 2 missed periods, she got a pregnancy test, and surprise, surprise, it was positive. She goes straight to Jeffrey's house and comes into a house that smells like something rotting. She asks why he looks upset, and Jeff says that he did something he shouldn't have done. Then it switches to Jeff's point of view. He saw the jogger that they had seen a few months prior on the side of the road and decided to pick him up and bring him back to his house for some drinks. And then one thing led to another, and he murdered him, did things to his body, and dismembered him in the attic. Back to Brinley's point of view. She isn't thrilled about this new information, and she runs out of the house, gets in her car, and drives away. Which is fair. What isn't fair is that she didn't call the police. Smart. So a year later, she's had this kid, and she just never told Jeffrey about it, which was probably for the best. Like, I'll respect that part of it. So one day, she's at a store with her kid, and she runs into, guess who? Jeffrey! So they exchange some awkward words, as exes generally do when they haven't murdered people. But outside of that, she does lie and say that her son was her little brother and calls it a day. The story concludes years later when Jeffrey Dahmer was caught, and Brinley and her now 14-year-old son see the news on TV. So her son still has no idea who his father was, despite the fact that she had him keep Dahmer's last name. It also mentions that her mom didn't know for sure if Jeffrey was the father, which again, Dahmer. Regardless, the son said that that man's really sick, and Brinley soulfully stares at the TV and says, "I once knew Jeffrey Dahmer." And that's it, kiddos. That's the end of it. I promised last time that I was going to find another true crime fanfiction. This time, I think I will search for Ed Gein, because that's the other Wisconsin serial killer that we all know and love. Regardless, this was an experience. It was much better written than the last one, though, so I have to give her points for that. There was definitely some grammar mistakes, but it was always understandable, unfortunately. So that's all I have for today. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!